Thanks, Sandhya. Very good afternoon, friends. It's my pleasure to introduce our next eminent panel. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Pragati Gondhalekar. Pragati has over 23 years of experience in audit across financial services in Canada and India. She is currently the country head group audit, Deutsche Bank AG India. Prior to this, Pragati was the group head of internal audit for a large diversified non-banking finance company. She has also been an audit professional with a Big Four prior to moving to the industry. Pragati is a member of ICAI, a CPA, and also a CIA. Welcome, Pragati. Poornima Subramanian. Poornima has over 24 years of experience and is currently the CFO at Reliance. Prior to this, she was the CFO at Tata AIG and has also worked in several companies in the manufacturing and financial service sector. Poornima has been a part of several transformation initiatives to improve profitability and efficiencies within finance and operations. She is a member of ICI as well as ICWAI. Welcome, Poornima. Himanish Chaudhary is the partner and internal audit leader for Deloitte India and also leads the banking and capital market practice for the firm. He has over 24 years of financial services experience, both as a consultant and in the industry across India and international markets, especially Asia Pacific. He has experience in managing large asset portfolios as well as working on several strategic initiatives in the banking industry. He's a member of both ICI as well as ICWI Institute. Welcome, Himanish. Neeyati is a director with the risk advisory function in Deloitte. She has been working in the insurance sector for the past 13 years and leads the insurance sector in the risk advisory practice at Deloitte. In addition to the insurance, she also leads the payments engagement from an internal audit perspective. Her core areas of experience are in operational risk, regulatory compliance, and process reviews. She is a member of ICAI. Welcome, Neeyati. And with this, I'll hand over the session to Neeyati, who will be moderating the session.
Thank you, Nehal. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody. Hope everybody is well in these current times. It's a great honor to get an opportunity today to speak at the IIA's National Women's Conference. And it's so inspirational to see so many women hold such significant positions in varied prestigious organizations. I would like to set the context for the discussions to follow. We often are posed with a question: where does internal audit really fit into strategy? Can internal audit occupy a key position in management decisioning? Today, the world is changing more than ever before, especially with the given critical situation of the pandemic we have been witnessing and living in the last 1 year. There is a constant need to transform, become more digital, agile, and dynamic. It's proven over time that organizations which have a good governance provide the most consistent returns to the shareholders and to the society at large. Hence, it's very critical that internal audit needs to keep pace with the change and be a credible stakeholder in the strategy and the growth agenda of the enterprises. With the right capabilities, internal audit can help organizations in monitoring and implementing the strategy of the organization. We may have a lot of questions to consider, like does internal audit understand the business needs or expectations? And are their goals aligned to the business requirements? Does internal audit really have the right people and skill sets? Are they equipped to address the business needs? Do they have the right balance between assurance and strategic initiatives? Do we think we really need to transform internal audit to a strategic advisor? I think with this, in our topic today, internal audit being a strategic lever, we would like to consider all of this and get the views of the panelists on board. I have today a mix of highly accomplished panelists here, with Poornima representing the business and the strategic agenda, Pragati, who is representing the voice of the internal auditor, and Himanish, who is from the consulting world and who works across strategy and governance, who will share their views on these topics. So, with this, I would like to, commence our discussion with the panelists today. So, my first question will be to you, Poornima, in terms of what will be your views on internal audit role as you stand today, and how do you see internal audit providing a comfort or insights in the strategic agenda?
Thank you, Neeyati. I think internal audit, in its primary and its traditional role, so to say, was to provide independent assurance on the organization's governance, their internal control processes. However, I think as the organizations are moving rapidly today towards a future which is technology driven, which is innovation oriented, which is risky, and has these ever changing business models, I think managements are increasingly getting concerned about the vulnerability of their businesses to the risks that are emerging. And they are wanting to always, have this comfort that they are adequately protected. I feel internal audit must also sort of attune themselves to the challenges that the organizations itself sort of face. So, given this, I think internal audit must take on a more strategic and a more central role, so to say, in the organization's future. Now, in the strategic role that I think internal audit must play, I think it has to do it at several levels, really multiple levels. One is, sort of focusing on what is the immediate risks that the organization is facing, the immediate threats that the organization could face. To give you some examples, are the pandemic that has just sort of hit us in the whole of 2020.
Yeah.
And therefore the other risks that come along with it, the internal controls and how they are given a work from home situation, which is very different from what you would normally sort of face. The cyber security, which is sort of hitting us currently. So just taking the example of the pandemic, I think in 2020 we've seen a whole set of risks that have sort of hit us. In the beginning of this year, I would think that credit risk was one risk that organizations were sort of faced by, given that we had ILFS and then later on DHFL, etc., which were sort of stressed assets, and so risk management had to sort of incorporate the credit risk aspect. But as the pandemic sort of hit us and we moved on, we realized that business sort of came to a standstill. In March, which is usually a very peak season for most organizations. So the whole business continuity or business risk, basically. And then the markets became very volatile, and therefore the whole free fall of the markets, and therefore the regulatory risk of solvency, etc. So when a company is sort of faced with so many different challenges, the company, of course, or the organizations, of course, sort of quickly put together several process changes, make several adjustments, to sort of face these risks. And they do it and obviously digitization has been sort of one primary priority that happened for most organizations, and it went at a very rapid manner. Now, these are all situations where I would think internal audit would have had a great role to play. So the expectations from an internal audit perspective here would have been to sort of anticipate some of these risks and see how they evolve, look at internal controls, give assurance immediately on these processes to make sure that the process that is being set up newly is really, in fact, the best one. And then not only do that, but also keep watching out for what are those things, what are those risks that will keep emerging, because this is a very a situation in flux. So what could be the possible other risks that an organization could face, and so sort of continuously keep monitoring and advising the organization on that. As a second step to it, I would the example I would think would be on cost optimization, and how most organizations during this period have gone through the whole cost rationalization, optimization sort of exercise. So how could they how can internal audit sort of help in understanding these business processes and allow and advise on how we can have enterprise focused cost efficiencies, etc. So these are some examples where I think internal audit can play a very sort of strategic role. Now this is very immediate and sort of something that is like a threat that the organization faces um, in the immediate sort of time frame. But also I think while internal audit will focus on the immediate sort of threats, it also needs to have its view on a 1 to 2 year sort of a horizon and a longer term horizon. What can happen in the next 1 or 2 years? So for example, like a technology or a tech governance related failures that can happen, because there is so much digitization that is happening, and the space is to continue even after a pandemic. The space is something that most organizations will sort of continue. So how do you look at what can go wrong with the technology governance, and failures around that, etc. And then really long term, in terms of what will happen if infrastructure of the technology fails, and what will happen if there you would have weather related, climate related. So more really long term, which can sort of affect the continuity of business. So I think internal audit can play a role at multiple levels in all of these time horizons, and sort of really in the various time horizons, to see how they can add the strategic perspective to the organization.
Yeah.
Now, this is what I would think from a management perspective, and most internal audit organizations will be somewhere along that spectrum. Some would be more and some would be less. But I think this is where I would, from a management perspective, expect an internal audit function.
Yeah. Thank you, Poornima, for your insights. I think it's very important that internal audit today, looks at anticipating emerging risk both in near term and long term, and helps management in designing their processes and participates in the strategy alongside. I think it's very important to be forward looking. And with that thought, my next question will be to Pragati. Pragati, what will be your perspective and take on this? And you have been in high growth organizations, and how would you reflect on the role internal audit can help in strategy?
Thanks, Neeyati. So let us take a step back in terms of where internal auditors have been spending most of their time, right? Traditionally, and we should, and then we will talk about what would I mean internal audit's contribution from a strategic lever perspective. So traditionally, if you see, internal auditors have been spending a lot of their time on assurance-based work, right? So be it compliance with regulation or compliance with the policies and processes of the organization. And a very little time after this was spent on strategic initiatives. But given today, as the environment is changing at such a rapid pace, and I think that's what we have heard Poornima talk about, in our opening comments. I think it's very important for the internal auditors to kind of be very agile, very dynamic. And I think there needs to be a right amount of balance between assurance kind of work as well as the strategic work which internal auditors need to undertake. And from a strategic perspective, I think internal auditors, there are a number of ways in which they can get involved in various strategy implementation. So let me take an example on digitization, right? Because again, that's one of the things which Poornima talked about, and I think digital transformation is something that every organization is in the process of rolling out, or is definitely talking about, because that's the journey they want to undertake. So how can internal audit get involved in the digital phase, right? So there are a number of ways in which I feel internal auditors can get involved in this process. they can along with the first line and the second line, they can get involved to understand, okay, what are the key risks which has been identified in a particular strategic implementation on the digital side. They can certainly give their views on the design effectiveness of the processes and the controls which has been designed to mitigate some of these key risks, right? They can certainly give a very prompt assurance whether these are in line with the regulation and the internal policies of the organization. So even before the controls and the processes are actually rolled out, internal auditors can give all this view. So then if there is any course correction which is required, it can be undertaken upfront. Another area, in addition to looking at the design and a strategy implementation phase, which they can look at from a digital transformation perspective, is looking at and giving their views on the scenarios which are used to kind of test some of the digital transformations before they actually go live, right? Because even though design is effective, but if you have not tested it in all possible business scenarios that which you could encounter when you're expecting to use a digital platform, then I think it will have limited value. And I think that's where internal auditors, they have a vast experience in terms of looking across the processes in the organization. They can certainly contribute to the comprehensiveness of the scenarios which are looked at it from a digital transformation. And if all of this is done at the rollout phase itself of any digital journey, even before the digital platform goes live, I think that internal auditors can, internal auditors' role as strategic advisors then becomes very, very clear. And they are then not only looking at the digital transactions after everything is rolled out and implemented, and maybe looking at it 6 months down the line, but even before the digital platform goes live is where they spend their energy and time on. And a similar thing can apply to any other strategic implementation. I mean, if you have to take another example of, let's say, a new product rollout, right? Internal auditors, due to the process expertise, can certainly look at the organization's operational preparedness. They can look at whether the processes which they have designed, can they identify the risk which may emanate from that product. So it's basically, trying to get internal audit involved early on in the process, right? But I think also it's important that the organizations, just the way they involve the first line and the second line and budget their time in the entire project management, they need to also factor in and give enough time to internal auditors to be able to come in, do that review, and add the value which they can truly add. And this exercise, I think, can be done for every single strategic implementation. I don't think any strategic implementation where internal audit can't get involved and contribute. And I think by doing this, what we are also doing is we are changing the time element, right? We are reducing the time element from an event happening or from a process or a product or a project being developed, and the time by which the internal auditor reviews it, right? And that's where the gap between occurrence of an event or a process and internal auditors looking at it can be drastically reduced. Then once this is focused, and of course, the other thing which Poornima, I think, talked about was on work from home, right? So work from home exposed us to a lot of different risks. I think one of the ways in which internal audit, could have possibly looked at, and I'm sure a lot of organizations, internal audit functions have already looked into it, that what has been the change to the risk landscape because of organizations working from home? Have you been able to identify those risks? Have you been able to quantify those risks? And what are the course corrections or the changes in the processes which we are making to ensure that no risk materializes because of the fact of working from home? And then internal auditors have got involved in looking at these processes, looking at the organization's preparedness, and keeping a very closer eye of any evolving events, right? So I think that's one way in which certainly work from home, where internal auditors could add value to. Yeah. So I think so to summarize, internal auditors being involved in strategic activities is not a choice, but I think it's mandatory and it's important, and I think it should be taken up just like any other assurance exercise that we do.
Yeah. Thank you, Pragati, for your insights. And I think you have made some really great points. And one of the most striking one is that, remediation at the design stage is much more preferred than rectification. So that's why, it's very imperative now that we get internal audit views and involvement right up front, which can benefit the organizations in many ways. And obviously, assurance is mandatory, it's required, but how we can get the additional value addition initiatives or strategic initiatives added on to the internal audit layer, and make it a attractive package, so to say. How can you make internal audit more attractive like that to the organization? I think that's more important. So thank you very much for your insights. And I would now move to Himanish. If Himanish, request you to please share your perspectives on this.
You're on mute, Himanish.
You're on mute.
I think Poornima and Pragati have said it all, but before I respond, I just want to thank IIA for conducting or for organizing this National Women's Conference. I think it was much needed, and I think there is, I was just hearing in on some of the earlier sessions, and they were extremely informative. And I hope this becomes a very, very established property in the years to come. So. I mean, from a internal audit and how does it go into strategy, I think we are fast approaching the phase where it will no longer be a choice, and it will be no longer be a choice for the business side of the enterprise as much as it will not be a choice for the audit side of the enterprise. And I think the last time we saw a lot of reforms, etc., was at the turn of the last century, which was on the back of the SOX reforms, etc. And there have been some smaller ones down the road, the COSO refresh and all of that. But I think with COVID and all of this, there has been significant acceleration. And the way of doing business, everything has changed. So internal audit by definition also has to change. And the only thing I would like to add is that, yes, there is a need for, as you said, remediation is better than rectification at the remediation at the design stage. But I think as the internal audit community, and I say this because I've spent more time on the business side than on the audit side of things, is that we also need to understand how to approach strategic engagements from an assurance perspective. And whenever an enterprise embarks on a strategic initiative, it is also trying to figure out something that is in the unknown, and there will be risks involved. And the fine balance actually lies with the audit community, internal audit community, to actually facilitate the process, correct the process, but not put a sense of, for lack of a better word, fear of being caught up in the observations and whatnot. So I think we are going through this change. I think my view is in the next 4 or 5 years, the way we do audit, the way the boards perceive audit, the way the management, everything is going to change. It's a state of flux at this point in time. Obviously, business changes and everything else follows. That's how the markets have moved over since inception. But we will have to have that sense of balance, which will then become, we will still act as a community of internal auditors. We need to act as the conscience keepers, but at the same time, have a way to look at the compliance, regulatory, the audits that we do because it's required, versus these kind of strategic audits where the objective is to, yes, keep the conscience, but also ensure that the enterprise kind of gets into uncharted territory. So I think that's the balance that we need to find across, even as consultants, frankly. So that would be my addition to whatever points that Poornima and Pragati very rightfully made.
Thank you.
I already feel that now internal audit is a very attractive proposition.
Well, we
With
have to
some
define the
time,
word
I can
attractive.
become the. I can also do internal audit.
So, I mean, everybody is an auditor in that sense. We all have to be, there is a sense of self-governance in any role that we do. And in that sense, there has to be a check and challenge in any function. Internal audit is there to kind of keep that structure in place. And if you really look at it, if you look at companies that have returned value to shareholders over a period of time, the one thing that stands out is that there's been good governance. And governance does not mean audit. Audit is a part of governance. It also comes from a certain sense of transparency and all of that. So yeah, I mean, audit needs to be an attractive proposition.
It is. It is.
With that, I think it's very important that we rebrand ourselves, we reposition the entire internal audit function. And with that, I would go on to my next question. And I would like to ask Pragati this question. Pragati, how do you feel the internal audit community needs to respond to the changing business environment? What is the enabling infrastructure and the facilitation the AI community needs to, needs as a support to contribute to the strategic agenda?
I think let me start first by addressing something that you just touched upon before you asked me this question. Is that AI community needs to rebrand ourselves, right? I think I would say that it should start with the IA community. I think rather than waiting for anyone to ask us to do something, I think nothing stops us from raising a hand and saying, okay, we want to be involved in any strategic initiatives. We want to be part of the journey. This is how I can add value, right? And IA community certainly has the ears of the board and the audit committee. And they can certainly engage into right level of conversations with various board members and audit committee members, and show them what kind of value we can bring to table, right? And I think once that tone at the top is set, then it's, I would say, is getting involved in all the strategic initiatives and delivering, adding value, and let the organization see for itself that what kind of benefits that they see out of this entire involvement of the third line of defense in everything that they do, right? So I would say the most important enabler would be setting the right tone at the top, right? That's the first one. Now coming to your question about how do we respond to the changing environment, right? I would say that, and this again ties into the earlier discussion which we had, that internal auditors needs to be dynamic, right? I mean, we cannot have an audit plan in place which we decide a year ahead of time and say, okay, these are the things which we're going to be looking at, but rather we also need to look at, okay, and predict what we, or rather anticipate, okay, what is going to come our way, or what's going to come in the organization's way, and what are the things which we need to look at, right? So an auditor needs to be, in this case, they need to be agile, they need to be very dynamic and quick to respond to whatever is happening in the environment surrounding them, and then make suitable changes to the audit focus areas, which they can then look into and give their views or comments to the management, right? But I think the key enablers for this would be definitely deploying technology, right? IA needs to go through their own digital transformation. They certainly need to use all the various digital avenues which are available out there, which is advanced data analytics, robotics process automation, use of machine learning or AI to predict some of the risk which they can focus on. Through advanced data analytics, they can certainly develop some kind of online dashboards in which can enable them in trying to identify errors or isolate areas of focus, which can then be used to decide where the energy of the internal audit function needs to be channelized, right? Where they need to spend their time, and in what level of detail do they need to go through. Because then that's the place really where the organizations are looking at internal auditors to be able to contribute to, right? Now, looking at robotics, there are various compliance-based assurance work that we do. So can we apply, robotic process automation to doing some of this compliance related work, right? And if you see more and more organizations, they're looking to automate some of, for example, the SOX compliance testing, right? Or they are operational audits, or their compliance testing program. So if you're able to use technology to do, some of the assurance audits that we do, then of course, certainly that will free up a lot of the IA resources time, which then that can be channelized into more strategic initiatives, right? So clearly a use of technology, I would say the first enabler. Second, I would say is, the people, right? I mean, traditionally, if you see auditors, we had tech savvy auditors, and then we had the auditors who used to kind of had the technical and the business background to be able to do audits, right? I think given the era in which we are, where everything is fintech and everything is digital, I think every auditor, in addition to having audit skill sets, in addition to having the technical background of the business they're auditing, they also need to be equally tech savvy, right? So it's not a good to have, it's a need to have, right? Because then only they will be able to contribute to what the organizations are looking at from an auditor, right? So the tech savviness is very, very important, and I think we are headed there, because more and more, if you see even the course curriculums which the auditors are put through, I think there is a lot of weightage which is given to topic around digitization, around technology, right? Cyber security, the risk which emanate from these areas, because I think the audit skill sets, technical skill sets, and technology skill sets kind of go hand in hand. So I think it is also important for internal audit professionals that we equip ourselves with all we are well-rounded. We equip ourselves with all skill sets which are required, and it's not a one-time exercise. If you see, technology is evolving at such a rapid pace. So I think in order to keep pace with that, all auditors also need to kind of increase the relevance by keeping them up to date with all the technology developments, so that they are able to identify the correct risk and audit them in such an environment.
Yeah, I think that's a very important point that you brought out, how important it is to become more relevant today. As internal auditors, I think we all need to look at that and equip ourselves, our people, our teams, and give them and facilitate the right knowledge, build that constant learning curve for them. I think that's very important, and that's how I think we can contribute to business, we can contribute to management and their initiatives. So thank you, Pragati, for those insights. Poornima, a next question to you. So, in response to Pragati, do you think that businesses are in support to the transformation of the internal audit functions? And where do you think it is from a prioritization standpoint, given the current business challenges?
Sure, thanks. I think an organization's commitment to internal audit and its development, that really is reflected in how it sort of firstly identifies the roles, the responsibilities of internal audit, like what Pragati mentioned, the tone on the top, or the culture of the organization in how it sort of gives the empowerment, the support to the internal audit department, and sort of defines and identifies its roles and responsibilities, I think is sort of most important. And it all really sort of starts from there. But really, I think the way the management can contribute, from what Pragati said, there are obviously issues around the enablement, and there are issues around the whole competency. And that's how I would, sort of split the two things, where once, the culture is right, and the tone has been set, responsibilities has been set, really support for the, internal audit from the management would come in terms of enabling them and to help them build the required competencies in order to do, the strategic role that they set out to do. So from an enablement perspective, I would think internal audit many times may not be aligned with the business risks. Or they may not have the use of the right technology, like Pragati mentioned. It's the technology bit is very important. Or they may not sort of know how to prioritize on which risk is most important to the organization, etc. So that bit of help is what the business can do in terms of supporting, to sort of help prioritize, to help align with the business risks, etc. In terms of the competencies itself, what she mentioned, the use of technology, it is not something that is desirable. It is absolutely critical, most important. Therefore, I think what is really required is then to enable or to support them with the right kind of technology, the right kind of knowledge building with respect to what is out there, and just like we are talking of robotics and RPA, etc., for our payment and our payables function. Similarly, if a lot of that is done in an automated manner, the basic operation sort of checks, then there's a lot more time that the internal audit will have to be able to focus on issues like this. So I think what's most important is to help them with the right technology, ensure that their knowledge gaps are sort of filled, they're adequately staffed, trained, all of this, so that we are able to function together as a comprehensive unit, and get the best out of what internal audit has to offer. So I think that's.
Thank you, Poornima. Thank you for your views on that.
I think there's just one more thing that I'll want to add. I think the management or the organization also has to have the awareness that there is an independence aspect that an internal auditor carries, which is probably the most important in their hierarchy of what they need to sort of achieve. So it is imperative for the management or the organization also to keep that in mind, while it is sort of giving the roles, the responsibilities, etc., to internal audit, so that you're able to get the best out of that function.
Yeah, thanks, Poornima. So, Himanish, on that note, how do you see this playing out as you engage with various clients across the spectrum? You're on mute again.
Just to kind of take a step back and add to the previous conversation, I think one of the things that I would want to see again is from a support to the IA function is an active talent rotation. It is very important for people from operations functions, people from front lines move into audit and then go back into the enterprise. And I think if that circulation gets built up, then you will have, along with the skilling and all of that we spoke about on technology understanding, I think that will create a better appreciation of the strategic agenda that will ensure that the business and the audit functions work on strategic agendas in a more in a better, more effective manner. So that's one. And again, how do we see that playing out? So just if I have to step back and see what do we do as a consulting or as an advisory firm, we serve our clients across the spectrum. We do strategic work, and we do internal audits, and we do management reviews, process reviews, or whatever it is. And from our perspective, just to put things in perspective, if the an audit skill is actually a very core skill. Even if you have to deliver a strategic engagement, and I talk here as somebody who works with the industry rather than works in the industry, An audit skill basically revolves around observation, around an ability to find anomalies, and around an ability to see whether there can be possible efficiencies, and that is not too different from making. That is not too different if you look at a transformation, which is absolutely on the other end of the spectrum. So personally, I find people who are good auditors are also able to serve clients in other capacities. And if you ask me, I think we use that as a talent spotting ground, and then they can always come back and do audit. So from an industry perspective, this is from the perspective of how we see it. Now, from an industry, we see multiple behaviors. We see clients where they are absolutely clear about a uh, very kind of defined path for internal audit. Two, we have very large clients who've actually told us that, listen, there is no audit plan. What you decide is going to be the audit plan, and the management should be ready about it. And I'm talking about this that we have seen, and there are again places where we have worked, where we have seen that it's an extremely joint workforce that is going ahead to deliver very large strategic engagements, and so therefore we see wide a wide spectrum of behavior. And obviously, as Poornima mentioned, it's about the tone at the top. It's about how, even, or as Pragati mentioned, how auditors have taken the initiative. And it's a two-way street. Is where we have seen clients getting more, or people in the industry getting more bang for their buck when they work in a joint manner. There is no doubt about the fact that today in the industry, there's a huge audit overhang. The audit fatigue is phenomenal. The regulator is coming in thick and fast. There's a pressure to do business. The auditors.
Himanish, you're mute again.
Sorry. There is huge fatigue. And therefore, we have to find better models of working. And in a number of cases, we have seen those models which are more efficient, where if we are covering areas where there's a certain level of convergence, there's a certain mix of reviews that are done, where there is a lot of investment done in automation, in working with data to you get the grunt work out of it and focus on strategic areas and all of that. So we have seen a wide variety, but I think one thing is very clear is that organizations which kind of strike the right balance will have a competitive advantage. That's for sure in the years to come.
Yeah. Thanks, Himanish. But just in continuation to Himanish, what you mentioned, if we look at it from the other side, how do you think, as a reaction, have professional services firms responded to it or adapting to the continuous and quantum change? How are they responding to the situation? How are they changing?
Okay, well, I mean, the change, because since we are kind of serving this space, I think the change is it's almost a battle of survival. I can tell you, for us, right from the talent pool, we have more engineers in the audit profession than ever before. We have MBAs, we have people who've done finance MBAs coming in. But one thing is for sure, if we have to feed that talent with the right quality of work, today talent does not stick for money. Talent sticks for the brand and the work content more than anything else. If we don't give them a wide spectrum of exposure, talent is not going to be around. And I'm talking about professional services here. So therefore, it is imperative that even if we do an audit, it has to be done in a manner which is more innovative, which is more attractive and which is more efficient. Today's talent does not like grunt work. They would like to work in an intelligent manner. We have to give them that. And therefore, most of our investments are in the area of technology, are in the area of building data platforms, are in the area of looking at newer ways of doing. I mean, I can just give you an example of we are focusing a lot on media audits, for example, because the more the enterprise are going digital, their media spends on digital are increasing significantly. And therefore, one of the but that's a totally different skill set. And we'll have to go and look at that. So from a professional services standpoint, we have to be ahead of the curve. We have to have those discussions with the industry stakeholders to take things to the next level. And that is, again, we have to have the right talent and create that environment so that the talent can prosper. I mean, firstly, intellectually, and it is important that we give. So the lines are getting blurred. We have this concept of a purple person. We are increasing purple person in Deloitte terminology is a person who understands technology and domain. So even within technology, even when we're hiring technology professionals, we are pushing them to say, hey, I mean, it's great, the systems and the ins and outs of the system, but it's important you know the dynamics of the business that the system is getting used to deliver. And similarly, when we look at accountants or whatever who come in from the domain, if they don't know, so we are increasingly creating this mix of people, and that's a very, very aggressive ongoing process. So we will continue to do that. We will continue to invest in platforms, newer areas, because that's how. And we cannot we will not be able to deliver to our clients if we don't put people who in front of them who have not only done audit but also done consulting. Yes, when you do an audit, there is an element of independence. There is an element of form and format, which kind of we have to adhere to. And that kind of takes away a little bit of the impact at times. But the fact is that, from a professional services, we are facing a totally different challenge in terms of getting the right people, keeping them and grooming them and giving the right exposure.
Right.
So that's from a professional services standpoint.
Thank you, Himanish. Poornima, Pragati, would you like to add something to this?
Yeah, I can go first. I think what I see professional services, firms really contributing. Definitely, they have data-backed sort of insights that they, bring to the table. Especially around the pandemic, we've seen, the kind of updates they gave on COVID, etc., to the board. So there is a lot of data-backed insights that they are able to provide. I think the attempt is to be more forward-looking and strategy-focused for sure. The transactional sort of penny picking, sort of continues, but I think it can definitely, I think that's sort of inherent with the whole compliance testing, the, governance, etc. I think it sort of goes along with that, but a little less of that, is starting to happen, as we go along. That's really great. The use of technology also, is quite impressive. And as much as it is to our credit that we are able to get audits done remotely, it is credit to the auditors as well that, they're able to do a lot of this, remotely. And then they're really taking the brunt of it by, certifying stuff, saying that it is correct. So I think a lot of credit goes to the, professional services firms around this. There is also I've seen an increased amount of focus on collaboration and communication. It is in my so many years, I think it is only sort of increased. And, this year is what I've seen a great amount of collaboration and communication in a situation where, we've been working from home, we've been working from remote locations, etc. So I think, yeah, so they, and to sort of summarize, I think the whole thing that Pragati spoke about earlier, the ability to sort of effectively integrate with the first and second line of defense, I think they're doing a fantastic job on that.
Thanks, Poornima. Pragati?
So to again, add briefly to what Himanish said earlier, and what Poornima has been commenting on. I think as we see the balance tipping more towards strategic assignments, and as we do more and more of this, we'll certainly see, and which we're already seeing from an internal audit community perspective, that a lot of operations people, a lot of engineers, and MBAs wanting to do internal audit work. And I think to me, it already shows that the internal auditor's role as being a strategic advisor in any organization has started to take off, and from here I can only see the journey upwards. And I think, as Poornima said, yes, internal audit roles are going to become more and more lucrative as we see more of the strategic assignments happening. And let me address, just on my concluding notes, often something that holds an internal auditor back from getting involved in strategic assignments is, are we breaching our independence, right? So to me, if I have to give an example of what I spoke about earlier quickly, is that internal auditors, they not get involved in designing a process or designing a control, but they can certainly comment on the effectiveness of a process at a strategic stage once it's already been rolled out. By doing that, I don't think they will be jeopardizing their independence in any way, because it is still within the core competence of what an internal auditor is expected to do. And it's basically they're still doing the core job, which is kind of commenting on adequacy of the design effectiveness of any process, which they would do in any case as part of the assurance testing assignments.
Thanks, Pragati. And with this, I would just like to kind of, highlight some of the key points that we discussed today. I think one of the centric discussion was on people, how we need to enrich our skill sets as internal auditor, be the purple person, address the strategic initiatives of management and be that support. Second is technology. From that perspective, how we use technology to audit our processes, audit the routine assurance activities, and focus and get that time out to focus on more strategic initiatives and bring that balance. The third is look at how can business support the internal audit function in how they can design the role, how management can draw up the role of an internal auditor, and at the same time how can internal auditor rebrand themselves, reposition themselves in that, okay, what we can also do and help you in the strategy and help you implement that. And above all, how can we all be more forward looking, help management anticipate those emerging risks and kind of help them at the design stage itself, help them look at the effectiveness of the design up front, and ensure that the processes are streamlined before implementation. And with that, I would like to put our panelists a bit on a spot now. If all three of you kind of quickly can give me your wish list, if you have a wish list for any three items from an internal audit perspective, what would that be? And I would like Poornima to go first.
So surely forward-looking, less of transactional penny picking. If you can eliminate it completely, great. Absolutely be on the top end of technology so that we are able to learn something from them.
Thanks. Pragati.
So internal auditor being involved in every strategic discussion and having a seat at the table in all strategic forums. That would be my first wish list.
Oh.
Second is being a little bit more patient, just the way we allow time for the first line and second line, allow internal auditors to come in, be part of the journey and also contribute, just the way the other two lines of defense does. And thirdly, of course, raising our hands, right, more frequently. If people are not willing to give you that chance, I think let's ask for it.
Yeah. And Himanish?
I don't know what to say after these 6 wonderful options. I mean, I can only agree with all of them. And the only thing I would like to say is that I want to see better talent coming in, and internal audit should be a viable career option. And we need to be more technology and more data in the way we do IA. So that would be.
Yeah, and I have the Time's Up banner on the screen, but I don't know if we have time to take a couple of questions. But I would like to thank all our panelists today for this engaging discussion and wonderful insights. Thank you for taking your time out. And in conclusion, internal audit is a function, is at the heart of good governance, and it is imperative to see it transform and keep pace with the strategic agenda of the enterprise. We have one question. I think we should take that, I would like to address this to Poornima, and then maybe Pragati can go on. What are one or two competencies that internal auditors need to develop that will enable understanding the big picture and the company's strategic initiatives?
Yeah, so firstly, like Pragati mentioned earlier, putting your hands up, more often, so that you're able to be a part of as much of the business as possible, because that's what is going to make you forward looking, and that's what is going to make you be able to sort of look at the risks that are emerging. I think that is really it. If you feel that you're able to sort of be there, and have the patience to go with the management, and explore and understand and figure out what the emerging risks are, I think more than half your journey is sort of is sort of completed. You've half of what you have to achieve, you would have sort of done. The other things would be like, of course, you have to have the right competencies, you have to use technology. All of that comes later. First is the real intent to be a part of the business and understand. I think that is the main the key.
Thanks, Poornima.
I couldn't agree with you more, Poornima. I think we have to be there has to be that initiative from to be part of strategy.
All right. Okay, Pragati, would you like to have your concluding notes, and then we can close?
I think in line with what Poornima just mentioned, right? It is up to an auditor or an individual to, if they really want to understand what an organization does. So I think they need to look over and beyond the work which they're doing, right? There has to be complete eagerness to understand the business risks that the organization faces, to understand which the organization goes through when trying to implement strategy, to understand the clients, the product, or the markets that an organization operates in. So it's if one restricts themselves just to the job that they're doing or the particular assignment which they're working on, I think that learning is not going to happen. But trying to look way and beyond what they're working on is what will definitely help them to gear up. And I think the second thing, I think which Himanish and Poornima spoke about, be well-rounded, have a dimension to yourself of technical background, business experience, as well as being digitally savvy, right?
Yeah. Thanks, Pragati. I think being curious is the key. So thank you all, and thank you IIA for having us. Thank you for the session.
Thank you, IIA, for having us.
Thanks everyone.
For having us. And thank you so much, Neeyati.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Neeyati, Poornima, Pragati, and Himanish for the wonderful session. This is really terrific and really interesting session, and I'm sure all the participants will have a good takeaway from the session. As you rightly said, that setting the tone at the top and the culture of the organization is really important, and the key enablers like developing the digital infra and enabling people to work into the environment is very important. So now we have to take a short sweet break for 10 minutes. I request all the participants to visit the exhibition halls and the career fair section. Thank you all the panelists.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And we are thankful for our platinum partner Genpact, gold partner Deloitte, silver sponsor ANB, associate sponsors TDP Global, Protivity, TVS, EverQ, Innova, and SBI Mutual Fund. Apart from this, I am thankful for MGC, JHS and Associates, Amazon, Society General to participate in the career fair organized by us. Do visit the stalls at the exhibition and the career fair section. See you in next 5 minutes.